Hello everyone, this is your professor, Danny Araneta Cabulay, on the course Accountancy Research. We are now in week number 5 and this is our video lecture number 21. And we will be talking about research methodology. This is just part 1. Okay, next week we will be talking about part 2. So for this particular video, let me just walk you through first our outline for this particular week. So we will be talking about research design and techniques. And we know that there are two types of research design, qualitative research and quantitative research design. Okay, so we will also be talking about respondents, participants, or subjects. Then we will talk about ethical considerations when doing research. And finally, we will be looking at statistical sampling techniques. That could be the most challenging part because you will be doing some computations. So let's start with our video lecture number 21. So let us try to differentiate first qualitative research and quantitative research and how exactly their design differ. Qualitative research explores and provides deeper insights into real-world problems without the need for collection of numerical data, points, or intervene or introduce treatments. Ang ibig sabihin niyan, pag qualitative research, puro narrative, puro salita, puro observations. So walang computation, walang statistics involved. Kung meron man, napakakaunti lang o very basic. So kaya yung ibang researchers, mas gusto nila ng qualitative research kasi medyo Waterloo nila o medyo hindi sila magaling sa math. Okay? So qualitative research means you're talking about narratives. Okay? Stories, anecdotes, observations. One of the strengths of qualitative research is its ability to explain processes and patterns of human behavior that can be difficult to quantify. True. For example, yung ugali ng tao, yung kilos ng tao, can we actually quantify them? No, we simply jot them down. We simply record them and narrate them as is. It's difficult to quantify. If you need to quantify, you need to have a lot of observations so you can quantify. Common observations. Phenomena such as experiences, attitudes, and behaviors can be captured by qualitative research. How participants explain how, why, and what they were thinking, feeling, and experiencing at a particular event or time. Meanwhile, quantitative research emphasizes objective measurements and the statistical, mathematical, or numerical analysis of data collected through polls, questionnaires, surveys, or manipulating pre-existing statistical data using computational techniques. So ang ibig sabihin nito, pag quantitative research, abay marami tayong numbers or statistics na gagamitin. So we need to calculate, we need to compute. You see, ang isang quantitative research, meron talaga siyang hypothesis. Pero ang qualitative research, most likely wala siyang hypothesis. You just state the problem. Okay? Usually kakambal ng SOP ang hypothesis, right? But in qualitative, usually wala po siyang hypothesis. Quantitative research focuses on gathering numerical data and generalizing it across groups of people or to explain a particular phenomena. Let's explain them further in terms of basic characteristics. Qualitative research would be subjective, uses inductive reasoning, explores a research topic, gains understanding of the topic, explains a phenomenon, and builds a theory. Meanwhile, quantitative research is an objective type of approach. It uses deductive reasoning. I'll be teaching you later on the hypothetical deductive method. Okay? It investigates research questions, makes inferences, meaning hypotheses, finds relationships among variables, makes predictions, finds causation or causes, it tests a theory, and generalizes results. In terms of purpose, qualitative research studies everyday life, events, problems, or situations, explores lived experiences, takes on participants' point of view, discovers pattern, behaviors, and phenomena. It, meanwhile, the other one is quantitative research. It conducts experiments. You test the hypothesis, determines relationships between variables. So you can come up with a correlation or establish a relationship or a causation. Now, when we talk about typical research questions, kapag qualitative ang research natin, medyo malawak siya, broad. It seeks to explore variables not necessarily included. Relationships emerge throughout the research process, and there is no need for hypothesis. In a quantitative research, it's kind of narrow, it's so limited. Nakafocus ka lang sa isang tanong, isang problem, or isang hypothesis. And then you seek to explain what it means. It includes two or more variables, indicates perceived relationship. Hypothesis is based on data from previous research. Now, attributes of the sample. When you calculate N, no, based on N, the population, N is not important, not as important. Usually, smaller sample size, researcher would strive for saturation, not necessarily representative of the population. Ibig sabihin, pag kinocompute natin kung ilan bang ating i-interviewin, ilan bang ating oobserbahan, the number is immaterial to prove that your research is valid or credible. Unlike in a quantitative research, numbers matter. The larger the number of samples that you get, the more reliable your results are. Okay? So very important. N should be appropriate. The population should be appropriate, and the value of the sample size should be calculated. Okay? It should be representative of the population being studied. We'll talk more later about sampling, how to calculate the sample size. So I will be teaching you later on sampling techniques. Then when we talk about sampling procedures, for qualitative research, most often purposeful. No? It depends on the purpose. It's purposive sampling that you use, or convenience, or snowball, etc. You have it's identified and not anonymous. Okay? You have to identify the person who you are interviewing. Hindi pwedeng anonymous. Okay? Now, because you have to establish the credibility of the respondent in a qualitative research. In a quantitative research, pwede pong anonymity, no? Pwede pong anonymous yung respondent kung ayaw nila ipalagay yung pangalan nila. Okay? Sometimes randomly selected, that means probability sampling. Often purposefully selected, that means convenience sampling, etc. And it's most often anonymous, as I said earlier. Now, the types of data that you get from a qualitative research, these are usually observations, interviews, usually open-ended, no? Questions are asked, documents, audiovisual materials, etc. Meanwhile, in quantitative research, they should be measurable and quantifiable. For example, surveys, tests and inventories, and questionnaires. Okay? Now, in terms of data analysis, for qualitative research, you prepare and organize data. Transcribe verbal data to written data, organize data for manageability, then you read and take notes or memo, describe, classify, interpret. That means coding and themes are necessary. And then you represent and visualize. That means you can use a comparative table or hierarchical tree, etc. Meanwhile, for quantitative research, you need to apply descriptive statistics. You have to measure central tendencies, mean, mode, median, measures of spread like standard deviation, okay? And then inferential statistics. You can use estimation of parameter, testing of hypotheses. You run tests using statistical software packages like SPSS. Appropriate tests depend on variable types and research questions. And when we talk about establishing reliability and validity, qualitative trustworthiness is important. So that means you must observe saturation, triangulation. Ibig sabihin ng triangulation, yung method na ginamit mo ay at least tatlo. And they all validate each other. Hindi pwedeng survey lang ang ginamit mo. Dapat gumamit ka pa ng dalawang techniques. So you can consider your methodology fully triangulated. Collaboration, you can use thick, rich description, peer debriefing, reflexibility, and bracketing. Now, when we talk about quantitative research, quantitative reliability is important. So you can test and do retest. Inter-rater, parallel forms, internal consistency, quantitative validity, internal validity, external validity, phase validity, construct validity, criterion-related validity, formative validity, and sampling validity. We'll talk more about that later on. Meanwhile, here is a case study I want you to ponder on. Auditing during COVID. Hospitals, private hospitals like the Capital Medical Center are recipients of funding from the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation on the hospital bills of COVID patients. The firm's auditors work from home and are pressed for deadlines. The audited financial statements and the audit report must be released by the end of May in time for the stockholders meeting in July. Now, here are the questions I want you to answer for video lecture number 21. First, suggest ways on how auditors may conduct substantive tests. Alam niyo ba yung mga substantive tests? Yan yung mga cash count, accounts receivable confirmation, bank reconciliation, inventory taking, etc. Can you suggest ways on how the auditors may conduct substantive tests and they're working from home? Paano nila gagawin yon? Okay? Isip-isip tayo. This is a very difficult question. And then, what measures must the audit manager implement to ensure integrity of the report and safety of the staff? Okay? Ano yung dapat gawin ng manager para yung kanyang report ay makatotohanan at may integridad? Okay? So there are two questions there. Good luck! So I will see you around for video lecture number 21.